Hey, Steve, we'll get started in a few minutes.
Hey Shane, how's everybody doing?
Good.
No big
Good. This is great. I had a crappy cold. I can do this right from my dining room. Excellent.
Hey, sorry, how are you?
Tell us where it is.
Again for donating.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. How did it go?
Our events actually. I'm just gonna mute everyone.
Oh, come on.
Hey,
Hello? Get some sound here? What's going on? Come on. What's going on? Like to hear something, folks.
hey, have a good day.
You're gonna speak tonight or you should think about it?
Yeah.
Just
I-
get around to the new year.
Say hi to Ira.
Oh, yeah, well.
Ira, before I say hi to you. I'll
Keep the staff to the assembly. She knows a thing or two.
Neighborhood you live in, that's right.
Hey, pretty good.
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
No,
I said, I said.
I know, I actually, I.
Respectful.
About to get started, yeah.
How are we? Yet ready yet?
Well, getting ready and like with people's seats. I don't know what, but like. You brought your little bear. Okay, I think we'll get started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if everyone could take their seats, that'd be helpful. Yeah. Or, you know, you don't have to necessarily listen to me, I guess. Yeah, but as usual. Bring this meeting to order. This is the November 2024 general meeting of the Independent. My name is James Campbell. I am president. As we begin every meeting, just to make our general statement. The Independent Neighborhood Democrats welcomes debate and discussion on topics of concern to the members of the community by candidates for office and others. IND believes in the right to free political speech, but believes strongly that personal intimidating or threatening gestures or words, attempts to silence speakers, or similar inappropriate behaviors are unacceptable. Individuals engaging in such behavior will be asked to leave. By the way, for everyone that's on Zoom or on Facebook or Zoom, if you're on Zoom, please make sure your Zoom name matches your real name for attendance purposes. If you're on Facebook, just please leave a comment so we know that you're been watching. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, so I'm not gonna mince words. We got our asses handed to us. Yeah, we lost, and this we may no longer have a democracy. I'm not gonna mince words, yeah, I'll be honest. So don't really know where we go from here as like a country. But sure we'll be finding out very soon. There is some glimmers of bright lights. The president-elect's nominee for Attorney General had to withdraw, so some good news there. Not necessarily predictable. Let us hope. Everyone, please knock wood for the next 4 years. That's probably the best thing that's gonna happen for us.
Pam Bondi is the new nominee.
If you really.
Really?
Yeah.
BONDI, that according to the.
Who's that? Who?
Pam Bondi is the new nominee. She.
Former Florida
I
attorney.
was predicting Madison Cawthorn.
Matt,
I was thinking Judge Cannon.
I was thinking Judge Cannon too. But okay, so we do have some good piece of good news. First and foremost, the Equal Rights Amendment passed. And this is, we get to pat ourselves on the back here. The most yes votes of any assembly district came from right here in the 52nd. Literally, all of our hard work right here at home, talking to our friends, our neighbors, really did pay off. And additionally, like after it was called on election night, it's one of the few good parts of that evening. A friend of mine who was a county chair upstate actually said to me, texted me and said, if it wasn't for your club's letter to Chairman Jay Jacobs, the state party would not have devoted its resources to make sure it was part of their coordinated campaign. So it was really us. And Vicky, I have to give a special shout out to because she was her idea. We got that passed, so.
Hang on, is Joanne gonna be here or not?
I don't know.
Oh, she's not gonna be here. All right.
Well, I just provide an
Just
update.
make sure that she hears this. Joanne did not have a competitive race, right? So she devoted all of the time that she would have spent campaigning for herself for New York One. And that, she didn't have to do that. And that is what leadership is, and just so much kudos and gratitude to Joanne for that.
Yeah, serious kudos, and she was doing a lot on Prop 1. She was also doing stuff like we were part of the coalition to oppose Props 2 through 6 here in New York City. She did a lot of resources on that, her emails, talking to neighbors, helping out, hand out literature. And also a huge thanks to everyone who stood outside poll sites, spoke to voters. There's so many people, and Suzanne and I can speak to this, that did not know about the ballot proposals. And so we had the opportunity to really talk to people and say, here's what's going to be on the ballot and here's why you should vote no. Because especially when like people are waiting in line, the way I described it was shooting fish in a barrel, and be able to talk to them and say, hey, here's what's going on and here's why these proposals, well, proposal 1 is good and proposals 2 through 6 are going to be bad for the city. So a few other pieces of good news. Yet again, the 52nd has regained its title as the highest voter turnout AD in the state. I don't have that number in front of me. Give me a little bit and I can get it to you.
They haven't certified the results yet.
We don't actually, yeah, that is correct. We don't know the exact percentage, but I think it was something like 80-something%. I have it written down like in the notes. So I'll bring up a bit.
It means more judicial.
And Vice President Harris received the most votes on the Democratic line from the 52nd of any AD in the state. Joanne Simon, our Assemblywoman, won with the largest percentage of any Assembly candidate in New York State. And then with no vote, with Props 2 through 6, 52nd was the source of the most no votes, and actually did receive a majority of votes passed on Props 3, 4, and 5. So again, like this club's efforts on trying to say no to Props 2 through 6, it really did work. It really did pay off. So huge thanks to everyone. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. And one last piece of good news, and this one's courtesy of Howard. One of our former board members, Paula Kay, has been elected to the New York City Assembly, replacing Assemblywoman Eileen Gunther. And despite sheer coincidence, actually, the weekend before the election, I was actually, as part of a campaign trip to New York City Young Dems, I was actually knocking doors for her. So a very nice little thing to help out with this club.
That means we have 3 former IND members in the New York State, 3 present or former IND members in the New York State Assembly. Harvey Epstein as well, although the Assemblywoman at the time used to spit when she said.
Harvey Epstein of SNL fame. And if you have not watched that clip, after this meeting, go and watch it. It is.
It's
phenomenal.
great, except he's got a more absurd opponent.
That is true. We don't talk about that with the opponent. At least without giving an NSFW warning. So, okay, now we just have to do a little bit of club business, and then we got onto the sort of more fun stuff. So, this is constitutionally our our nomination meeting. So at this meeting, we have to do nominations for officer positions. And then we'll do the first round of nominations for executive board as well. The officer positions are president, first VP, second VP, treasurer, corresponding secretary, recording secretary. And then with the executive board, it's up to 15 additional members. So with that, nominations are now in order for, and also, so I know you can nominate yourself. Know that. That nomination is now in order for president.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know what you're about to say. Yeah, to be in all,
My mind, that's very.
get to know someone long enough. Or to be an officer, you have to have been a member of the club for 2 years and be a member in good standing. So if you're a returning member, it's 2 meetings a year plus paid dues. If you're a new member, 3 meetings and paid dues. If to be on the executive board, it's just 1 year of being a member. Art?
Nominate Seamus Campbell, president.
Second,
Third,
fourth.
Seamus Campbell, unfortunately, reluctantly does accept the nomination. Are there any other nominations for president? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are now closed. Okay, nominations are now in order for first vice president.
Daniel Zuckerman, share. Sorry, she's our current.
Yeah, yes.
Danielle's up.
There's a second. Danielle is informed that she would accept, so is there any other nominations for first vice president? The nominations, any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations now closed. Nominations are now in order for a second vice president.
Hello?
Hi, Al.
Yeah, hi, I nominate Karen Johnson for second vice president.
Sure she accepts. If not, she'll probably call me and yell at me at 3 AM.
That's a good time.
Is there a second?
Third.
Any other nominations for second vice president? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? None, nominations are closed. Nomination down in order for treasurer.
Vicky Eustace.
I say Vicky. I
Okay,
say we go back to Vicky.
so reading that as an nomination from Ira, since he never said that. Okay, Vicky, I assume you accept the nomination?
It's easier to continue than to pass the reins, frankly.
Second.
Any other nominations for treasurer? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Nominations now in order for corresponding secretary. I'm sure Eileen will accept, so, is there a second to Eileen? Second, okay. Eileen Doherty has been seconded, nominated and seconded. Is there any other nominations for corresponding secretary? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Nominations now in order for recording secretary. Lynn, do you accept the nomination? Is there a second?
Always.
Any other nominations for recording secretary? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations are now closed. Okay, so now we're up to nominations for executive board. So that with this one, like we have 2 more meetings. We'll be voting in January. So if there's anyone who also wants to do it that we talked to in the meantime, you can nominate them at a future meeting. So it's totally fine. So
Judy Greenwald.
I'm gonna make the assumption that everyone here also has like agree. So Judy Greenwald,
Cheryl Cook,
Al Friedman. Okay, Art. Okay. Larry,
Nominate myself.
Lana,
can't do that.
Dana,
Nominate Art Levy if he's interested.
Thank you.
Anna,
Mind you.
Al is, asking.
Al, sorry.
Hi, did you get the nomination for Cheryl Cook? Was that recorded?
That has not been recorded yet. So Cheryl,
Cheryl Cook. And
Right.
also, can I make 2?
go for it.
I'll make 3. Larry Galata
He nominated himself.
and Ira Weinstock.
Already nominated by Art.
Already
Okay,
did
very
it.
good. Okay, thank you.
I think you all, the 3 of you share a brain. Art,
Dana.
already nominated by Joan.
I nominate Maya.
By Kornberg,
I nominate Julia.
but Julia, okay. I nominate Bridget Farrell.
I also nominate Sari.
Right? Art,
Joan Newman.
Hmm?
That's right, we agree on that one.
I think so.
Dana?
Let's ask Matt to join the board.
Many on
15.
besides the officers?
Yes. She is ex officio as president emeritus till I become a year.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Okay, so-
Another one,
Yes,
Sari?
he was already nominated.
Julia, just thank you.
Julia did it.
Thank you.
Can you remind us what the rules are for?
A member for 1 year. Yeah. So currently we have Judy Greenwald, Al Friedman, Ira Weinstock, Larry Galata, Art Levy, Susanna Pasquantonio, Cheryl Cook, Maya, Julia, Bridget, Sari, Joan, Matt.
Jeff's trying. to
Aaron
get
was
it.
nominated for second VP. Okay. Any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, okay, we'll bring it back up at our December and January meetings. Cool.
And just to put things in perspective, I am declining in case anyone gets that idea. Thank you, Larry. Last year, someone tried to do it.
Someone who is not physically present this time. I remember who it was.
I don't. I just remember.
Don't ask me. I remember that meeting very well since it was against, I went up against a certain presidential candidate.
Is Alyssa Meyer interested? Is her name-
Alyssa is president emeritus. She's already on the board. Steve, of course.
And Jason.
Jason Shelley?
Okay.
Jason, he's on. Oh, he's there.
Forgot about him.
At 14. It's 15.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
I wrote it down.
I forget if it's 15 to 20 or 15 is the maximum. I'll double check the rules. So, I'll do that, in a second, actually. Okay, so moving on from that. So certainly, there's a lot to talk about, we saw that, well, thankfully, President-elect Trump's, no longer has a majority of the popular vote anymore. As of the votes that have come in. But of course, there have been a lot of losses in all over United States. Certainly Republicans are picking up momentum. There is a whole, certainly here in New York, in Southern Brooklyn in particular, we saw a huge swift swing to the right, with Senator Ewen Chu, Chris Freight. And so we thought it would be best to try to do a postmortem discussion and try to see what went wrong here with someone who analyzed this stuff for a living. So he's zoned out right now. Jeff, I'm talking about you.
How about that?
Yeah. So
Casino bid.
nice. So with that, we invited Jeff Colton, who is certainly no stranger to this club. He spoke, what was it, 2018?
More recent than that, I think.
Okay, yeah. Time's a flat circle, that. But so we invited him to come speak to discuss it with all of us, what changed with the electorate. Jeff, would you like to come up?
Yeah, hey, good to see you. Thank you all for having me. I am, well, to be clear, I didn't prepare anything, so this will mostly be Q&A based, since that's a lot easier, and I know you all are, heavily engaged and have lots of questions, and I can do my best to kind of gab back and forth. But as was, I believe, briefly mentioned again, I'm currently writing my newsletter during this, so it's difficult, but
You're flummoxed.
I'm flummoxed. Exactly. I'm Jeff Colton. I co-author Politico Playbook, the New York Playbook. I hope you all subscribe. If you don't, please sign up. We work really hard on it 5 days a week, putting together the newsletter, and we just, deeply cover New York politics as much as we can, despite the shrinking news coverage across the city and the state and all that. So, yeah, with that, I'll open it up by all means.
Before the election, all the blogs, I think including yours, were running lists of competitive races in the city. For some reason, in the second category of somewhat competitive, they were all listing Andrew Gennardis's race, even though he represents a hugely blue district. But you all missed a race in Southern Brooklyn where the incumbent was held to 50.5% of the vote in a district that was a Trump plus 50 district.
Novikov?
Novikov
Yeah.
versus Cohn Saban. And in the district, the noise was very heavy. Novikov was complaining about being outspent and so on. clearly something was going on and no one seemed to have picked it up.
Yeah, no, I underestimated him. I mean, I talked to a few people that were following the race and, you know, a few months
Excuse me,
ago.
could you tell us where that?
Oh, sorry, yeah, so this is Michael Novikov. He's a first term assembly member in like Sheepshead Bay and Midwood, I want to say the district is.
Part of it, Manhattan Beach.
Manhattan Beach mostly, yeah, that's like the core of it. And he upset Steve Simberwitz 2 years ago, so it was.
No, I know, but I don't know.
Oh, you know, all right, well, to everybody. So he upset Steve Simberwitz, Southern Brooklyn seat. And it's really, really shifted red in the past few years. It's a heavily Russian district. And yeah, Sabin ran like a really interesting race where he was basically like, look, I know you're all gonna vote for Trump, but vote for me as well. And it became a really ethnic lines kind of race, as many of these are, where Novikov was getting all the Russian votes and Sabin was really going for the Orthodox Jewish votes, the Sephardic specific Orthodox Jewish votes, because he himself is a Sephardic Jew and was kind of running on like a community pride kind of thing. I'll represent you in Albany. And I mean, gosh, I think he's 239 votes down out of 15,000. I just checked in with the Board of Elections today. It sounds like he's still gonna lose. It's not.
Which one is the Democrat and which?
I'm
is
sorry,
the
so
Republican?
Joey Cohen Sabin is the Democrat. Novikov, who's the incumbent, is Republican. Attempted to be a flip Democrat over Republican. But it's an interesting case. A lot of people were like, look, honestly, Novikov is like the most centrist Republican you can get. He actually like donated to Bernie Sanders. He used to be a Democrat like as recently as like 3 years ago. And Cohen Sabin is like as conservative of a Democrat as you could get. So there was arguments that actually like, in theory, the Republican was more liberal than the Democrat. But you know, this was not an ideological race. This was really a like ethnic and community-based race. And I guess more than anything, this was a, whether you're voting straight down the line or whether you're willing to cross party lines and vote these. So yeah, it was a huge surprise that he did that well and really outperformed Trump by some massive number. I don't know the exact number, 30 points or something.
Novikov.
Cohen Sabin outperformed
Harris.
I guess outperformed Harris. Yeah, I'm talking past myself here. Again, you know, because again, the partisanship is so complicated here because it's not about partisanship. So that was a race I should have paid more attention to. We all should have paid more attention to. And it was really interesting. You know, I had Justin Brannon has been calling every single reporter in town for the past month, being like, you guys need to write about Southern Brooklyn. You need to write about Southern Brooklyn. We need attention. Like, stop writing about Pennsylvania and Long Island. Like, what about us? You know, I guess in a way, he has a point. There's really interesting politics happening there that I think speak to larger trends. Another one being like the Asian American vote, with new districts that come up there and fascinating races. So,
Before you get to that, the race is the Brooke Krasny race.
yeah,
He started out as a Democrat. I served with him in Albany.
another fascinating one.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Was a Democrat, then went Republican, just like Ari Kagan, followed the same path from Democrat to Republican. This is Alec Brooke Krasny.
He
And he,
converted before Ari.
yeah, he got there first.
In fact, Ari campaigned against him and said, vote for the Democrat last time.
Mhm. But he was, Chris McCrate, he was running against, yeah, Bay Ridge Dems, and they fought hard, but I don't think that one ended up being that close even particularly. It's just really, the district has really shifted to the right. It's really, I think it's hard for any Democrat to win, at least in the current environment. you know.
And especially in a presidential.
Especially in a presidential year, you know, it could be different. I mean, we did see the district is similar to the council district where we saw Brandon crush Kagan just last year. But the district is different enough. It's the assembly district is redder than the council district, and presidential year, much higher turnout, more people just voting down the line, and so Brooke Krasny holds on.
Yeah, coming out of the 22 election, there was a lot of criticism about the inability of the state party to effectively help campaigns in the way that Wisconsin or North Carolina or Arizona or other truly effective state parties were able to. Senator Gillibrand tried to step in and organize a coordinated campaign effort. Is there any sense about how effective that strategy was?
It's a great question because it's hard. It's hard for me to know the truth because immediately after, everybody was taking individual, and actually even during, Hochul, Jeffries, and Gillibrand were kind of the 3 points of the coordinated campaign, and their people, their like staffers, were constantly like bickering, being like, "We're the real genius behind this," or like the others aren't working hard. And literally every one of them said that about the other. And so
Which is not a good sign to begin with.
not a good sign. And yet, to their credit, I mean, the coordinated campaign, it succeeded broadly. Like, everybody agrees, even if they were bickering on the inside, everybody agrees that the state Democratic Party worked better this year than it has in, I don't know, decades. I mean, in a long time. And they flipped 3 congressional seats and held 2 difficult ones. I think my numbers are right there. Like it was a successful year. Plus Prop 1, which some people were nervous about because of the massive campaign to vote no by the Republicans, that still passed by a pretty comfortable margin. So like the Democrats, it was weird. I was with Jay Jacobs and Swazi and Gillen in Nassau on election night. That was my assignment. And there was this weird feeling where like everybody was knowing that it was going to go towards Trump by the time they like spoke. But like Jacobs and all, everyone was interested in saying, look, New York, like we did well, like we did our part, like we're happy, we're proud. But yeah, the White House is going to Trump again. And it was just like, I almost felt like, guys, like, shouldn't you be like more sad? Like, what the hell? Like it was this really weird mix, but Jacobs has been fighting for his life to hold on to the state Democratic Party for like years now. So it's in his interest to, say how well he did and take pride in that and take success. So
How did
success,
they
it was
do in
interesting.
the assembly? Did they lose any seats? Someone told me they had actually picked up.
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting on like a couple results, I think. There's the Long Island one with Philly maybe, and then
I think she lost.
maybe she did lose. And Novikov seems like he'll hold on too. So I don't know the specific answer for the assembly. I think broadly it's either they stayed the same or lost 1 seat.
I heard we lost the supermajority in the Senate.
I'm not sure about that actually. I don't know. Yeah.
I remember hearing that somewhere in the last week.
Yeah, they lost 1
I heard
seat.
that also.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Obviously that's like a pride thing, but I'll say, I mean, I don't know if they were using it. I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's ever an example. Like, obviously it helps to have a supermajority if you're trying to like negotiate with the governor, to have that like veto proof thing. But like in practice, I don't know if that will really make a difference. I don't know if there was ever a vote or ever will be a vote. You really need to use that supermajority.
It helps when the governor's from the other party.
Yeah, then it's a bigger.
Just FYI, everyone, because some people that are watching at home just did ask everyone to speak up when they're like asking questions. It works for our speaker to speak up because there's the microphones, there's no roaming mic, it's all in the ceiling.
Speak up. Yeah, please.
I don't know if this fits within the subject matter we're talking about, but congestion pricing. I understand that there's been opposition. I think Trump is opposed and litigation is either contemplated or underway. Can you give us the status of that? Given the fact that the governor has announced it?
Yeah, there's a split among like the legal folks about whether Trump can do anything. Nicole Malliotakis keeps saying in interviews on Fox News and CNN that like, oh, like, don't worry, Trump is going to kill this. But a lot of the other legal experts, I mean, she's not a legal expert, she's a partisan, but there are other people that say, no, I mean, once this is in place, it's just a tolling program. I mean, Trump can't stop the toll on like the Holland Tunnel. Like no president can. It's a state thing or it's a Port Authority thing. And that would be the same case here. Once they turn on the cameras,
Which will happen before he's president.
which should, if everything, moves like forward in an efficient manner, will happen before he's president. So maybe it will stay. It's gonna be, this is gonna be one of those tests of, is Trump just gonna use rhetoric, complain about congestion pricing and say this is bad? And then once he's president and once it's in place, he'll forget about it and move away? Or is Trump going to like use political, I guess, retribution in this case, or like work around it? Is he gonna cut off federal funding, highway funding to New York? Or, there's all these levers he hypothetically could pull to try and pressure the state to kill congestion pricing. I don't think that has been fully litigated yet, not literally litigated in the court, but more broadly, like, we haven't understood all the possibilities of what could happen. But at this point, Hochul, moving totally forward with the intention, getting this in before Trump, and it seems like that's going to happen. And then I think most likely it will happen and it will stay in place. Probably the bigger threat is a couple of lawsuits that are still pending from the state of New Jersey. I think the UFT lawsuit is still pending as well. Like, there's other groups that are trying to kill this through the courts rather than through politics. And it probably won't succeed, but you never know. You never, like, any judge could just at any point find some technicality and kill it. And it could be even a bigger headache, like I'm partly rooting for it to happen just because, like, I just want it to happen, like, we've been going back and forth about this for so long. Like, it would be nice to just see some big policy go into effect. So we'll see.
I have a comment and a question, and I really also want to know how you feel about being a political versus but we do miss you there. We're glad you're in Politico. But so the comment is just about the state party and Prop 1. I will just, like, for everybody's awareness, it was fascinating to me that I was very nervous that we were going to lose it, because when we were online talking to people at the poll sites, 25% were going in voting yes, and I would say half were like, we don't know about it. It was shocking. The other positive thing is, because you can say, I talked to you about the Equal Rights Amendment, almost everybody was willing to talk to you. Whereas, like, usually if you're talking about a candidate, people just don't, want to talk to you. But I was very, very nervous, and then went to my sisters in Rockland. There were nonstop ads saying vote yes on Prop 1, because there had also before that been nonstop ads saying vote no. This is about, women in sports. It was just a total, from millionaires. It was a real smear campaign.
Flooded the spending at the end.
Yeah, right.
And it was like the last week they finally started spending money.
It was, better late than never, but that was nerve-wracking. So this is the first time we've met as a group since the election. So I know there's been, like, nonstop analysis of what went wrong, or kind of curious to hear your thoughts just about that, like, a big picture stuff. But also really interested to hear, like, what you've seen in New York that has surprised you, like how so many people in Queens went for Trump, or just any kind of trends that the national media hasn't really been covering as much that we might not be privy to. Would be interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, when was it? I feel like, especially in New York City, especially Democrats, need to take a step back and remember that, like, Harris still won the city by, like, a lot. And that's more of a note. When I say that, that's more of a note to, like, Eric Adams specifically, who today was, and yesterday and the day before has been talking about how, we need to change. It was just today on CNN. I was listening to him like an hour ago, and he was saying, the people have voted that we need a strong border, and that's why I believe in, shutting down the border and keeping migrants from New York City. And every time he says this, I'm like, you represent New York City. Like, you don't represent the country. Like, yes, maybe the country voted for Trump, but, like, 2/3 of your city did not vote for a strict border policy. Like, they're with Harris. It was frustrating. So yeah,
City can't grant pardons.
yeah, exactly. He's definitely his relationship with Trump has been fascinating. But so yeah, broadly, like that's just been a point in my mind that like yeah, definitely there's been a big trend towards Trump that we've seen over the past 3 cycles. That's really interesting, and you know, any partisan Democrat is going to want to stop that trend and reverse that trend, and there's things that really need to be considered about how to do that. But I think there's also, you know, folks like the mayor have taken that too far, and they see this map of the trend red, where like the whole city is red, and they think that that's like the results map. And like the trend map is not the result. The results are still like New York City is deeply Democratic by a large majority. So I find that interesting. And as for like how to, you know, what Democrats need to do, I am so glad to not have an opinion. That's all for you to decide. Everybody's been talking about whatever, and I'm just here to like listen and hear the different ideas.
There is a question in the chat, didn't want to get to. Can you speak more to this conversation that Dems or on a national level, we're not talking to the working class and that's how we lost the White House?
Yeah, see, that's like I don't even know. I don't know. I feel, you know, I focus really only on New York. I don't focus on national politics. And I gotta say, like in New York, it feels like people have been talking a lot about the working class.
It's a union town.
It's a union town, and that is a big part. And Democrats here are not afraid to talk about the working class. You know, there's maybe nationally, middle class is more of the buzzword, but I feel like in New York and growing nationally, people have been comfortable saying the working class, the working poor, and like talking directly about that. And certainly, New York politicians are not afraid to say, you know, things are bad and we want to help fix them. Like that too. I think there was this narrative that like the Democrats were saying everything's great and ignoring anybody's pain. But like I feel like in the city, that's not the case. Maybe sometimes with the mayor, but that's a tougher situation.
I wonder though if
I thought we were right hands.
Yeah, let other people.
I've been raised by.
Yeah, please.
You know, thanks for coming, first of all. And I know you don't want to go all into why the Democrats lost, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, some of the stuff you said earlier presents us again as that circular firing squad. We said they were bickering. I was like, yep, we're going right back to the same old bad mentality of horrible retail politics. The part of it that you can speak of if possible is looking at some of the numbers and realizing Harris actually didn't perform as well in New York, state or city, et cetera, than what Biden previously did. Even though many of us, I do anyway, still felt like, you know, he was going to lose. We knew that. And sadly, I predicted she was going to lose, but I don't want to get into that. And I'd be even curious if you went to the Trump rally, because I did.
At Madison Square Garden?
Yes, I did. Because for me, part of it is you have to sort of get into the lizard brain of people where they are and not be afraid to talk to it, listen every so often, engage in it, just to get a sense of how people have been manipulated. I find a lot of times, you know, Democrats and all that are sort of like, hey, we'll write ourselves, we won't get, you know, yeah, I didn't go to listen to Trump. That's predictable. That's easy. I went to talk to supporters, and especially, you know, supporters of, I saw a sea of humanity, right? Obviously, yeah, there are a lot of people from Staten Island, but there are some people from right in Manhattan and all this other stuff and whatever else. There were, you know, Orthodox Jews, this, that, whatever else. And for me, it's just like getting into, hey, why? What's the angle and so on. So wondering if that's something you've
Yeah, so I streamed the Garden rally. I didn't go in person, but I did go to the South Bronx rally. And to Trump's credit, I think that was a good decision. I mean, people were, you know, laughing at the time, like, what are you doing wasting time in the Bronx? But it spoke to, again, obviously Trump didn't win New York, he didn't come particularly close to winning New York, but him just doing a rally in the Bronx showed that like he wanted the votes of like Black and brown voters. Like that was notable. And I think that really helped him. And to your point, it totally, like a lot of the chatter online about the Bronx rally was like, oh, it's just people being bussed in from Long Island. It's not really Bronxites. But then I was there and I was like, no, like, I talked to at least two people I talked to were like, yeah, we walked. Like they literally, like they lived that close. And then other people, like, yeah, I live like in Throgsnack, or like I live like in Wakefield. Like they were right there. They were Bronxites at this rally. It was incredibly racially diverse, age, everything. And it really showed, as a reporter, as all of us, it can be easy to, like, again, you see these maps and you're like, the Bronx, blue. If you live in the Bronx, you vote Democratic. And it can be really important to get that experience and just remember that, like, even in Manhattan, even on the Upper West Side, even in downtown Brooklyn and Brooklyn Heights, there are tens of thousands of Trump voters, and we live among each other, and it's not just neighborhood by neighborhood. So we're not as split up as you may think.
Yeah, because there's nowhere to go. We're all on top of each other. But the other part too is, it's something I've criticized the Democratic Party, national, writ large, and others for a long time, is that there's a tendency for a Democratic candidate, as I said, we're so lousy at retail politics, to say that we're only gonna go to the places where we feel, based on our guidance from people who are supposedly really smart, but sometimes I go, they may have gone to the best school, but a lot of times they don't have any common sense. They forget that it's a sales job. So in the same manner that when Trump ran before, now I'm going to places like Bronx, I usually say, even when I was looking at how Hillary Clinton ran her campaign, not to bring all that back in there, but I go, couldn't you have at least taken one trip to Arkansas, or whatever the case is, you used to be first lady there, to at least say to people in red states that I see you, I care about you, I used to be there, I can relate to you. Tend to forget that, and what Trump is usually doing, as much as we don't like him, but he was doing the salesman's job, right? And he was doing the same tactics on the Democratic Party that they usually fail to do. We're talking about broad things, threat to democracy and all this other stuff. That's all fine and good, but for a lot of people in the United States, especially the working class, that does not put food on the table. And Trump was playing the game of, here's a benefit, Wall Street model, right? Benefit, close, vote for me. And I just felt we're not very good at doing that, and we really have to go back to understanding how that works, and really talking to people who we feel may not be our voters, but I go, every voter is a potential. You have to spend some time with that.
Every night, my wife and I watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, and we must have been the only two non-swing voters watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, because every single ad was a political ad.
Yep.
For all the various congressional seats in New York, New Jersey, and Long Island. What struck me, though, was that it didn't matter if you were a Republican or a Democrat. You were talking about how tough on crime you were. Talking about how much you support the police. You were talking about how much you're going to support the border. You're talking about that. The Democrats that flip seats, talking about that. Even Mondaire Jones, ultra-liberal Mondaire Jones, was repudiating defund the police, calling it something I said when I was younger.
Everything that he told you guys 2 years ago,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
That should have never
We all
been
have to go
said,
back,
by the way.
but we all have to go back to the polls here in 7 months for primaries, and we all have to go for a general election in less than a year. So I'm just curious, knowing that, running on tough on crime was the winning message for those candidates, or at least they made it part of their message. I don't know if it was a winning message for them, but it was what they were saying. What can you say for that as a trend for the next election coming up, when we're talking about much more granular on the street candidates and on the street concerns, when people have to vote for their city council members?
I was just thinking about this. There was a cop that was shot, I think yesterday, and Brad Lander did a typical tweet saying, my thoughts and prayers are with the cop that was shot. And the response on Twitter, and Twitter is not like, good sample, but the response on Twitter was like 30 people being like, you said defund the police, you don't care about this cop's life, which, number one, is like totally unfair. Like, you can, even if you want to defund the police, doesn't mean you want to see cops literally dead. But that is still being used as an effective political tactic, that Lander said defund the police 4 years ago. Now he's running for mayor. That's gonna be hung around his neck. And it was the same thing with Mondaire Jones. And yeah, I think the mayor has a lot of other problems, but like looking at the mayor's race, the fact that crime is more or less steady and hasn't noticeably gone up is like something he is running on and plans to run on. And I think that's still going to be a factor in the mayor's race, in the council races, and all the city races. That said, probably less so than 2021. It was so fresh on everyone's mind in 2021, and there was this noticeable uptick in crime post-pandemic. Like it was a moment where crime was the number one issue, and at least we've seen with like presidential polling, crime is now like number 3 or something behind like cost of living and immigration or housing or I don't know the exact numbers, and it always changes. But
Do you think in a swing district, the successful Democrat has to be a tough on crime Democrat? Or can they, can people still
it seems
run
like they
on-
all are.
Can they still run, can someone still run on criminal justice reform and bail reform successfully anymore?
I would love to see an example of that, but you're right, in New York, Laura Gillen and Swazi certainly, and Jones, I mean, all the ads I saw, yeah, they were all running on Tough on Crime.
Why not both?
Pat Ryan could be a counterpoint. I can't say all of his ads. I think he's pitching himself as a little more economic directly. But I don't have a wide enough his campaign strategy to say that is, but I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, 'cause I'm a social scientist, I think differently. Maybe they should have done what I did. When I was speaking to people, I would go to Key Food. And I would say to them, hi, would you please vote for the Democrat? You know what the first person said to me? Let's go shopping. Now, when we were out in Pennsylvania, we would tell them blah, blah, hey, here's the logic. Gee, the Democrats love to talk statistics, but you know what? You can't take statistics to the supermarket. The other problem is when they were talking about Trump, everyone said to me, we know the guy's a fascist. Big deal. Why the hell are you harping on it? So what I'm saying is maybe if we get our politicians out of the street and put them in the supermarkets, put them into the shopping centers, have them talk to human beings. That's the problem. I keep getting all this crap from the DNC, blah, 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 blah. I've never been polled. And every time I send them a possible email, I get a wonderful letter back. Thank you very much for your comment. We're passing it down the line. Well, excuse me, by the time you pass it down the line, the election's over. So what I did is I'm walking around Park Slope and I have friends of mine asking how they're going to vote. Oh, we like Harris. Why can't she speak English? What do you mean can't she? Well, she's telling me about the wonderful joy. There's no joy in the supermarket. She's telling me about the wonderful economy. Well, it's nice knowing inflation came down. When's the last time that someone said to me, Harris went to a supermarket? The problem is Democrats have a really hard problem. You know what the problem is? They speak Massachusetts and Republicans speak Nebraska. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. When Trump was running in 2016, he goes to Middle America. He says to Mr. Jones in Iowa, where's the Ivy League? East Coast. Where is the capital? East Coast. Where are the major universities? East Coast. He says to Mr. Jones, you're not in the picture. And you notice what he did when he decided to do a Supreme Court justice? She comes out of Notre Dame, Middle America. Democrats don't realize that flyover country is 65% of the electorate. And maybe we should do what AOC is doing. Her district, heavily Hispanic, voted for her and voted for Trump. And what she's doing is she's asking them why. You know what the answer came back? Hi, it's the economy. And the other thing too is, hi, it's me. It's not he, them, she, it. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I talked to a number of DNC members in the past, I was working on a story about like who should run for DNC chair. And what every single person said, I think I interviewed like 5 members. Every single person said, we need to listen to the voters. We need to like that. That's on everyone's mind. Listen to the voters. We need to listen to the voters. I don't know what that. I don't know if that like practically means a practical change. But I guess it's a different mindset at the very least. It's a different mindset that like the Democratic Party needs to listen to the voters. And I guess I'd be interested in seeing whoever the next DNC chair is or any of the candidates, like what their practical plan for that is.
That's what both parties do.
Well, I mean, sure. I guess I think they're feeling like the Republicans are doing it successfully, and the Democrats need to change it. So, yeah, it's an interesting case.
I mean, that's why the Republicans, not to butt in, sorry guys, in some ways are pushing for people like, Donald Trump over legitimate Republicans, right? Because they see it as, well, these people failed us. The Democratic Party failed us, the Republican Party failed us, so let's go for someone who is populist and speaking real, blah, 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 even though sometimes they would say things that don't quite add up. We know that because, there's a lot of undereducation in our country. We're aware of it. And sometimes people are looking for their news sources and all that in one place, and it's fed to them in digestible bits and a lot of
The
times.
anti-establishment pick, I think that was like more than anything. I think that's why Trump won.
And part of that helped Obama too. People have to be understandable of that. At that moment, it's going on, and people would talk about, well, it was racism, it was this, it was that, and whatever else. And there were a lot of people who voted for Obama and also voted for Trump. So they can't be racist because they did vote for him. So it's about an issue of change.
Thanks so much for being here. My dad was there with us then. I remember when he was out in Chicago talking to Axelrod, said, hey, there's this, you meet the state senator. It's a real talent. Anyone in New York, not on the radar? I mean, these folks are pretty in the weeds, but like me, not at least as deeply in the weeds. Who's the talent out there that maybe you think has some future?
It's a great question. Yeah. The one that comes to mind immediately, I was just listening to him on the Sneaker podcast, Zellner Myrie. That said, I don't know if he's winning mayor this year. I think that's a really long shot, but talented, really, I'm totally, it's been fascinating to watch him win in 2018 and continue his rise. And even the fact that he's running for mayor this year is interesting. And he's one that I'm keeping an eye on. Again, long shot in 2025. It's going to be tough, but he's somebody. I have a good friend of mine is a journalist. She's always saying Chiose is going to be mayor in 5 years. And I'm always pushing back a little bit. I don't know about that. I just don't see that path for him. But I got to say, especially after passing this broker bill just this week, really impressive. Impressive, use of media, connecting. And then also, it's not just the TikToks. I mean, it's also getting a big bill like this passed, negotiating enough revenue with the, the real estate board and the brokers. It's really impressive. So, Chiose is another one I'm keeping an eye on. He's only 25, 26 years old right now, something like that. And there's a lot. I mean, that's a part of politics that I love. And I've been doing this now for
That age follows in social media.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been doing this now for roughly a decade, and it's been fascinating to see. Well, Richie Torres's roller coaster. I'll give you a preview of Politico Playbook coming out tomorrow.
Exclusive right here, folks.
Exclusive right here. Don't tell the New York Times before it publishes tomorrow. But Richie's gonna start a statewide listening tour because he wants to run for governor in 2026. That's out there that he's gonna run for governor, but we have the statewide listening tour exclusive, which is crazy. My mind is blown about this because I remember him. I covered him running for city council when he was a staffer running for city council in 2013, and he also was 24 years old, and now he's out here being beloved by half the country and absolutely hated by a portion of New Yorkers in the country, and wants to run for governor. So it's just crazy to see that path as well.
Two things I want to mention from the chat, from Joy. I'm hearing things people believe Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were two separate things, and And that they supported Obamacare, canceling that, but on the ACA would be left alone. And also she mentioned, 80% of black voters did go for Harris, and then Yasky, reference, I guess, to Iris Point. For what it's worth, Neil Gorsuch graduated from Harvard Law School and Brett Kavanaugh graduated from Yale Law School.
And Trump is a billionaire who lives in a golden tower. I mean, it's.
We don't know necessarily he's a billionaire. He says he is.
Well,
And
with
if we
the-
know that he says the truth about
stock
everything.
Is still rising, I
But
think.
he did go to Wharton, you know that.
Yeah.
And before that, unfortunately, he went to Jeff and I's alma mater.
Yeah, only 2 years, thankfully. Please, yeah.
He crushed. We've been there for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a question for an economist maybe, but oligopoly, what, the leader, rule by the elites? Like,
Depends on the elite. Like, here you have, an American, which is probably different than the elites. The people are in love. And the labor movement lies down on its back. And other shameful events, the Democratic Party. Now, David Brooks has a piece in the Times that says maybe Bernie was right. The statistics that have come out recently in terms of the literacy rate of American people are just appalling. Nobody books, sixth grade reading level, and it goes on. These are fundamental everyday things that this society just it's important. But why would they think learning is important? The oligarchs don't want you to be smart. Why would they want to dumb down America? And they've been successful. They've been damn successful.
one of my cynical takes about politics is I'm not extremely motivated about increasing like, I don't think having like a 100% voter rate is necessarily a good thing.
Are you saying literacy?
Oh, literacy rate, yeah, of course, I want a 100% literacy rate. I'm talking about people voting. Like, there's a lot of people that are not engaged in politics and don't follow this whatsoever. And this is like, I guess it's an elitist opinion to say maybe they don't need to be voting. If they don't want to vote, maybe they don't need to vote. Like, obviously, I want access to voting. I think that's incredibly important.
Colossal breakdown.
It should be easy,
Of the educational civics. Colossal breakdown. Americans can't get isms. They don't understand isms. They don't care.
Probably most of them couldn't
Certainly
be
one.
a congressman.
Right, so what are we up against?
Joan has got a question.
Joan's got a question.
I don't. I was trying to think of how I could frame it as a question, but I can't do it.
Go for it, we still.
I'm gonna go for it anyway, right? It doesn't seem to affect all of us, so during presidential years, there's a large number of people who come out only then. They're not engaged people.
Yeah.
right? They come out in 4 years and then we don't see them again for 4 years. I've always found it interesting that the 52nd Assembly District, the last time I saw numbers, which was some time ago, so they're higher now, 72% of the people living in the 52nd have minimally a 2-year degree. We live in a bubble here, and it shows, as Seamus started the beginning of the meeting, how many people vote in this district. But we're generally a kind of engaged community, and we talk to each other, and we're always engaged. We'll be engaged next year and the year after that, and even when it's only judicial delegates and judges on the ballot, we're engaged. People come out and vote. But I really don't want this meeting to leave without saying 2 things. Harris had 100 days to campaign.
Right.
Right? Trump campaigned for 4 years. Good, bad, or indifferent, he was in the public eye.
Yeah.
And so, and whether people knew things about him that they didn't like, but they didn't care. And I don't kind of get that at all. You know, people called him deservedly, in my opinion, horrible things, and they said, doesn't make any difference. Still voting for him anyway. I don't really I never understood that.
Delusional.
And the other thing.
The white
we
guy's
don't-
privilege there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that, you know, the last two times that Trump ran and won, he ran against women. And they both lost. And I'm sure whoever's head of the DN, Dems are not gonna put up a Democrat, a woman as presidential candidate again, because I don't think this country's ready for it, unfortunately. A vice president maybe, but I don't see it otherwise. And I mean, those were things Harris couldn't do anything about.
Yeah.
That she was a black woman was another thing. I mean, there are men in this country who don't believe that women can stand up to Putin, be head of the services. I don't think they see that.
Joe?
And I think it was a mistake also for her not to do something in New York. I mean, she had these wonderful rallies, although Trump had how many rallies in New York? At least two, right?
Very disappointing.
All right, and no, just took New York State for granted and we came through. But there should have been some presence here and there.
I think sexism is an easy excuse, but it doesn't explain why people voted for Trump and voted for Alyssa Slotkin. Or voted for Trump in states where they voted for Gretchen Whitmer. I think
It's different, that's not being the president. of-
No, but it's
That's the
being
difference.
leadership. And honestly, do people really think that if Biden had stayed in, he would have done better? The estimates were he was gonna lose four.
No, we don't.
So, but then it
There
doesn't.
should have been, there should have been a primary.
Everybody.
Should have-
No, I appreciate that, but the simple,
Of a field.
the simple, the simple explanation is people were unhappy with the economy, they were unhappy with the border, and Harris didn't separate herself from Biden as being responsible for the economy and the border.
Well, she was stuck with that as well and didn't do a good job and had not enough time to do it either.
And this lady speaks, she's been raising her hand for a while.
Absolutely.
Three more questions or so, yeah.
I don't know if you cover this, but I was wondering if you could speak to the health of the Republican Party in New York State.
That one's harder, you know? It's funny because there's I need to be paying more attention to the Republican Party in New York State in recent years, but being a New York City reporter, you know, Republicans have always been.
In the city, sorry, either way.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've always been a little bit of an afterthought. It's been interesting to see like Ed Cox come back as the leader of the Republican Party in New York. You know, he was kind of booted from the party because he wasn't committed enough to Trump. And then now he's just total sycophant to Trump and talking about how he's so great. And like, it's really interesting, back and forth there. And it's also been really fascinating to see the New York Young Republican Club, and their media savvy, the way they are, you know, have magazine profiles like every week, and you know, they go these parties.
State
And,
level.
what's that?
The state level.
I think they're just called
The New York City, New York Young Republican Club,
Yeah,
that
the
it's for
Gavin
Manhattan.
Wax Club.
It's for Manhattan.
It's Manhattan like based, however, they basically will accept members from anywhere. And I've spent way too much time and many hours like actually doing research honestly before you, Jeff. And I will never get that time back. I tried to expose them early on. No one listened. I knew they were fascists when they took over the Metropolitan Club.
Yeah, and now they've become a force. I mean, they're having Trump at their gala. Like, it's really fascinating.
afford Aaron Foldenauer.
And they're growing.
The
They said the
American
Republican Party
fascism.
is gaining significant amount of strength, city and state.
Institutional Republican Party in New York needs to catch up to the number of New Yorkers that are willing to vote Republican. Like, the county parties of like Bronx and Brooklyn are like pathetic. Like, they barely exist, you know, and like,
The Conservative Party of the Bronx will beg to differ.
well, somehow the Conservative Party of the Bronx is like strong. It's weird.
Qualifies more candidates than the Republicans
Yeah.
do, year after year after year.
Of course, the Bronx Republican Party, I'm waiting for the next indictment to drop. There was an unindicted co-conspirator in a previous well, anyway, they're going down. Look out, watch my reporting. But, yeah, I think it's interesting to see, like, yeah.
Unless it's a federal indictment.
Well, then it could be dropped. So yeah, good question. Like the Republican Party needs to catch up with like all these people. And there's also a factor that there are a lot of registered Democrats in New York. In particular, I'm thinking of like Southern Brooklyn that are always consistently voting Republican. They stay registered Democrat. Staten Island too. Staten Island still has a Democratic voter registration advantage, but you have not seen that in an election since like Obama 08 maybe. Yeah, there's like, if the Republican Party can flip them and start organizing, then this red wave can continue and continue growing. But I'm not actually seeing that yet. They're not that strong. Way in the back, Carlos.
Hello, Jeff. Good to see you. I think to the point that we're talking about your question about the Republicans and the young Republicans, and I think a story of this election is how young people have, shifted away from voting Democrat. It was very tight, this election. Obviously, there's like the gender gap, but as an observation, I think, we've all been thinking a lot about this. It is, I think one of the saddest things about this election is how much we're talking about like populism and economic populism and anti-system. The Biden-Harris administration is probably one of the most economically populist administrations in generations. If you look at the domestic policies, I mean, from the unions, the NLRB, to the antitrust legislation, obviously the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the largest climate investment ever, like in holding companies accountable. But the problem is that post-COVID, we've seen, and even before, the new mainstream media is podcast, streaming, and TikTok. And I think that Donald Trump, just like in 2016, was able to identify Twitter. And even 2008, Obama was able to identify Facebook and social media as the new realm. Trump did that again, and I think lost the messages. No matter how great policies we are on top of the messaging, I don't think in 100 days we could have undone years and years of a media ecosystem and landscape that has been so effective and is not explicitly political, right? There's a lot of these podcasters and streamers that are not necessarily political people. They invite the right wing to come on their podcast, and we have surrendered. We have surrendered the new media landscape, and young people, we've lost them. Every time Trump appeared on one of these podcasts on my For You page, just like when I'm scrolling on TikTok, it was full of these clips, these funny clips, of Trump, and we didn't have that on our side. And I think that I have a big worry in New York. I mean, we had the largest swing of any state towards Trump. And I think that, we really have to galvanize young people, but especially like the new media sphere, because people, and then is it progressive or moderate? There's blame going on. I don't think it matters on the label. It's that people, especially in urban centers, have a backlash against the current ruling establishment, whatever that, whatever affiliation is. We're losing rural, and then we're losing the messaging about the things that we are achieving. Right, Chiosei is a great example of a legislator that's been able to really capture, a good issue, delivering it, but also selling it. And I think the young Republicans are unfortunately doing that very well, and the allies in their media ecosystem. So we need to make an offensive on the new, where people are getting their information. It's like the alternative Fox News ecosystem is now in these new media, and I think that with Joe Rogan, I mean, and people are like, who's a Joe Rogan of the left? Well, Joe Rogan is a guy who has views from the left and the right, and the right has just seized upon it. And Bernie got a lot of backlash when he went on the podcast.
Invited Harris, and she didn't.
And I don't think she lost because she didn't appear on the podcast, but that's indicative of a lack of all these opportunities where you have the unengaged people that went out and voted. And we look at the polls, the people who are educated on the issues, who knew what the Biden-Harris administration had done, voted Democrat. The ones that didn't, voted Republican. I think we have to also focus, it's messaging. It's also years and years of losing the media landscape, where people are actually getting their news, and people are not feeling it. And I think Pat Ryan did a great job at laying out. It's like, I told my constituents, I'm for you against whatever elites want to poison your water, I want to take up your land, and just was selling the stuff that the Biden administration had done, was selling it constantly in the district. At the end of the day, Trump is a great salesman. He's a terrible businessman, but he sold. Why don't we learn from the selling? He sells 90%, 10% of the work, and it's bad. he sells 90% of the time. And I think with Biden, that we didn't sell it, and I think we need to sell.
In addition to the new media, they also cornered all of the AM stations.
They did the local
That's what they
stations
did.
too.
So they had like these totally different areas that they just covered.
Outmaneuvered completely for years, and you couldn't undo that in 100 days. We could have done a better job, but we need to focus on how, as party leaderships, parties, like, how do we actually like go where people are consuming news? Because it doesn't matter if you do something great if the right wing ecosystem says they did a terrible thing, they don't care about you.
And we used to have Air America, and then we had Current TV. Both of them have gone belly under. Meanwhile, there's this whole right wing atmosphere when it comes to the media, especially since the Reagan got rid of the equal airtime rule.
A related question about what Politico New York can do. I mean, to your point about people not being engaged, and I could not agree more with Larry, having taught students myself that we have just a tremendous lack of civic curriculum in our high schools, and elementary schools and colleges and throughout. I'm wondering what Politico New York has thought about doing, or folks like you have thought about doing, to kind of correct that part of it, which I think is a more systemic thing that we can be thinking about.
Yeah, we're a bad example. Politico kind of unashamedly focuses on politicos. I'm sure we have an audience team that is working to grow the audience, but I'll be honest, as reporters working there, my focus is on people that know and follow politics. I'm not writing for a general audience, and I love when my stories do reach a general audience. But yeah, frankly, we're a bad example of that. I mean, I don't know if I should be, thinking more about that and how to reach out. My colleague, my co-author playbook, Emily No, has a TV background, and she has been kind of experimenting with doing her own TikToks and sharing the news through front-facing video, and that stuff can break out.
There is one wonderful organization that I know, because I volunteered with them, called Civics Unplugged,
Mhm.
that do they bring people as volunteers to speak to high school students. So that's just a thought for you and Emily, but I'm sure there's many other ways to.
And yeah, I mean, I would love to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Start a TikTok. Do a TikTok.
I should. I mean, honestly, I should go to Blue Sky. I should try TikTok.
There you go. We just joined this guy, by the way.
Good. A broader point to the media, by the way. I mean, I'm a student of Eric Adams more than any other. Yeah, once that get.
He's talking now.
I'm a student of Eric Adams more than any other politician. And about the media thing, I mean, the mayor and his team have done a really good job of reaching out to non-traditional media. He hates us. He loves talking to the Breakfast Club and Alafoque Radio and every ethnic radio station the mayor has gives them time, and that gives them a lot of focus, and it's really impressive. And I think that is a secret power of the mayor's is that he isn't only talking to New York One, talking to community radio stations and newspapers that you don't even know about unless you're in that community. And he's good at that. And I think I don't want to underestimate, I do think he's going to lose re-election next year, but at the same time, I don't want to underestimate him and his chances, because he is a really talented politician. It's just hard to be mayor of New York City, and it's even harder when you're under indictment.
Back.
Okay, I have a question to come back to you, so we can maybe another question, but I have to make a comment about the sexism and racism and xenophobia, because I think we have all heard so many different takes, and then we've also heard what you said. It's just the economy, and the thing is, I don't think it's that simple. So anybody who went to Pennsylvania got this amazing fact sheet. It was mind-boggling. It was all about how the unemployment was cut in half, the amount of money that had come in through infra, mega, and it was about it was chocked full, where you're why weren't you talking about this sheet? Why aren't you talking about what's in this? But let's just for a moment go back. I know this is a little uncomfortable, but we know the whole idea of the Democratic Party is not listening to us. Biden was not popular over a year ago. He did amazing things. I don't agree with everything, but he did great things, but he was not popular. That was totally ignored. Then the other thing, just to kind of, give Kamala a little bit of credit. All of these administrations from liberal, from conservative countries, right? Japan, England, people who were in power 2020, 21, 22, they all are out of power because a lot of stuff happened. And I mean, even though our economy is better now, we're better than a lot of other countries. So there was that appetite for change. And I think what is so horrifying about like the media stuff is a lot of the things that we focused on Trump the first time around, like how he talked about sexually assaulting women. Like some of that was just like, oh, that's old stuff. It's in the past. And then all of these new voters came out. And so we just like, we kind of like left that in the way. But so I think we have to look at those bigger systems and like, if we don't think xenophobia, there was a huge anti-immigrant campaign. There was a huge transphobic campaign where we're talking about like 50 to 100 people across this country in women's sports. And millionaires were dumping money into New York and across the country. So the communications and the messaging is huge. And also like, if you're a woman and then you're seeing, I mean, you all know, I'm not saying this is also guys, like if you think misogyny was not a huge part of it, look at all the picks and the nominations. Almost all of them have been involved in some type of assault. Even Linda McMahon now was like part of maybe covering something up, groping with JFK. Like if we don't think that is not like, that is on purpose. Those are purposeful things that like, this is who this administration embracing. So anyway, just like my like long story, like it's definitely the economy. We are bad about talking about what Biden did well. And we're really bad about thinking like the stock market matters. It just doesn't. But at the same time, like, I don't know why in Pennsylvania, we didn't get some more of those people who like had jobs or where the money was coming or where the money was about to come in. We did very, very bad job at that. So communication's so bad. So now to pin it back to you. We are really bad about talking about what we do well as Democrats.
So bad.
And then also besides that, how do you counter the misinformation? There is a lot of misinformation. Joy posted about it. People who don't know that Obamacare is ACA, like a lot of misinformation. So how the journalistic sphere, like how do you combat being a poor communicator as a party who doesn't seem like they want to change after doing this for a long time? And then how do you battle just that misinformation?
Yeah, no, that part is tough. It's not, I think as a journalist, we often forget, like I spend so much time crafting like all the background information and like the bottom half of the story. Like most people aren't gonna read that part. Most people are only gonna read the headline. And I need to remind myself that I need to focus way more on the headlines because like way more people will ever read a headline than they will actually click on the story.
Clickbait.
I know, it's horrible. But you're just getting the information in the headline.
I'd read more of your stuff if it wasn't paywalled.
Yeah.
Paywalls.
Tough. I mean, it's like the way the journalists communicate is also, needs to be like improved upon. Just like the way that, any partisan needs to be improved upon. And it's really difficult to answer. I mean, again, like I like to be in my little cocoon of like speaking to people that choose to read the Playbook newsletter. Like, I'm like opting into like our nerdy community. But yeah, we all have a responsibility of speaking to the public and getting the information out. And that's just, it's tough. It's tough because I mean, more than I think it was mentioned, like people that are informed. I guess so many people are not voting on policy.
No.
They're voting on policy, but they're not voting on policy. They're voting on vibes and they're voting on, they feel like somebody is fighting for them. And like, we can waste so much, like arguing about policy is important and good because that will go into effect in the White House, but like the actual elections, I mean, I wonder if we just like are overthinking all of it, like if maybe we just need to like dumb it down. Like Trump has.
We need to dumb it down.
Dumbed down the strategy so clearly. Like it is just dumb and straightforward and it works.
It's true, but.
Because he looks. Question in the back.
I think so.
I have a more nuts and bolts question about, you cover local and state politics. So I'm curious about the response to this specifically, right? This is an election year. where there's, you know, a non-term limited comptroller going for mayor, a non-term limited Manhattan borough president going for comptroller. There's a lot going on because of the perceived weakness of Eric Adams. And so there's the like, what do you think the response to the election is in this election season, as well as also the like legislative response, right? There's the immediate response of passing of a city council commission, and there's the like the city of yes is sort of up in the air. I'm sort of curious what you think the response will be both in this upcoming election year and the legislative response.
Yeah. I'm really interested by that. I mean, the way that immediately, on the state level, the way that immediately after Trump won, Hochul kind of comes out and is like, we're gonna fight. And then like a lot of legislators like, we need to call a special session, we need to act. And then like the next day, Hochul's like, I had a really nice call with Trump, we're gonna get together. And then like the legislative leaders are both like, yeah, we're not gonna do a special session, we don't need that. It feels, I mean, the reaction is really different than 2016, you know? We've lived through it. I mean, I guess it makes sense from a, I don't know, just a logical point of view. It's like, frankly, people are like, it's just a different reaction to Trump winning. And we're seeing that with our politicians. It's not just like with the public, but with the Democratic politicians of New York. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to me. And
Maybe we'll change how they run their races.
well, yeah, so in 2018, like the election, the midterm after Trump won was like the high point of like progressive Democrats. Like AOC was, you know, the biggest example, but like all over the place. Like it was this huge anti-Trump backlash. Like there wasn't a single Republican assembly member in New York City except like the South Shore of Staten Island. And we've seen that kind of come back since 2018. And I don't think we're gonna get that reaction in 2025 or 2026. I'd be surprised. I don't think there's going to be as much of a blue wave in response. It just feels like a different political time. The mayor and his people and, you know, his consultants, his advisors, they're like feeling like this is good for him. You know, they're like, you know, the voters of New York City are more and more like embracing Trump, and therefore they like Adams, which is like a crazy take, but I get it. I mean, I get it. Like the mayor is far from Trump. Like I'm not saying that, but he has Trumpian qualities and he is embracing the president-elect. He is fully like playing nice with him, and they see that as a path to victory. They see the electorate as saying, yeah, we want a mayor like Adams, who's not going to go crazy over Trump, who isn't going to have Trump derangement syndrome, and is willing to work with the president and like put the government side first rather than the politics. And then we're going to see other opponents say that, you know, Adams isn't taking Trump seriously and he's a patsy and like we need to fight. And at this point, I'm a little more skeptical that that's going to work. That totally worked in 2017, 2018. I don't know if it's gonna hit as hard in 2025. We'll see. I think it's still too early.
It's too early. I think it depends on policies, et cetera, coming.
Totally, yeah. Once Trump takes office, like then maybe there'll be a different feeling. So it's too early to say, but I'm really interested in that issue when it comes to all the 2025 elections and then 2026 beyond that. That's like, yeah, like the thing I'm thinking about the most is just how is this going to affect local politics?
So, you know, I'm sure we'll all be looking for the political playbook in the future, you know, for all these great updates, you know, and also it's cool that we got the little exclusive this evening.
Richie Torres, statewide campaign. Look at it tomorrow. Thank you so much.
I may have leaked it to about 20 friends already.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And like, I really appreciate you all. Like, if you've read any of my stories, thank you. But I want to say, like, myself and all political reporters, like, we would not be able to do this job without people like you guys who like actually engaged in politics and were willing to go to club meetings and are willing to tell reporters things. So, you know, tell me information.
Don't forget, we gave you great advice free.
And all the
1 second, it was, yeah,
Start a TikTok.
Bad advice, yeah.
I'm not gonna charge
You wanted me to run a Democratic campaign, all this good. But yes, I will start the TikTok and join Blue Sky. So thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Just a few things. Larry did ask earlier about the turnout numbers. I did them earlier. So there was 63,963 votes cast in this 52nd Assembly District. That is, we right now have 100,695 voters, so that comes to be a percentage of 63.54% turnout. So. And then Joanne got 87.61% of the vote. So, yeah. So, and then just to correct myself from earlier, the Constitution says it's 15 to 20 members, and and also while we were doing nominations, Greg Monty did text me. Actually, I just didn't have my phone out, nominating himself. So, so any representatives, electeds or representatives, Susanna? Got anything for?
Yeah, one quick thing. You want to come up there or?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, quick thing, and I know we've, also, I just want to say it looks like there are like a good group of new people here today, so thanks for coming. And maybe if they want to say something. right?
Carlos, do you have something
up.
for Andrew?
I'm
Uh,
that
yeah, I'll
capacity right now.
Whatever you want.
So I'm gonna be fast because Joanne is broad, and I know Carlos is gonna really take up most of the time.
Good time him this time.
Yeah. So just real quickly, I think you all might know Joanne was working on a bill that was signed into law. So there were some good things that happened. Her Glock bill, and that basically is like a very particular loophole with the Glock handgun, where you can order a very cheap, very easy to get add-on, put it on the gun, and you take a handgun and you very easily make it into a illegal semi-automatic machine gun, and then it can fire multiple rounds. So Glock is now going to have to do something about this. So this is really great news. So it was signed into law. That was fantastic. So I think that's like the main big thing that happened. And then I think some of you have seen, some of you might have gotten the mailer about the home care program. So in this session, earlier in the session in April, as you know, with the budget process, kind of many things are grouped into one budget. So there's always 7 different budget bills. And then there are always a lot of things that legislators come in here and talk about how they really like, and they didn't like this thing, but it was included in this package. And so they voted for it. So at the time, one of the governor's proposals was to reform one of the home care programs known as the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program. And Joanne expressed a lot of concerns at the time, as did many legislators. They knew it needed reforms. Like the program is very big. It has several hundred fiscal intermediaries, which makes it administratively very bulky. And some of the fiscal intermediaries were bad actors. So they reformed the program, but there were a lot of problems. So the reforms, the advocates and the legislators were not so happy. Now, fast forward many months later, it's even more problematic because there's a real lack of transparency with the group who got awarded the contract, who is from Georgia, so they're an out-of-state group. And so they need to take over this program that about 250,000 elderly and disabled people are in, and that's how they get their home care. My sister is one of those people. So like I know what a difference it makes in saving people's lives and preventing them from going to their home. So at any rate, there are a lot of problems and concerns with this fiscal intermediary in terms of bad transition plan, but we don't even know because there's very little information about the transition plan and lack of transparency. So Senator Rivera has introduced a bill to try to walk back and fix some of these issues. The bill is going to be introduced in the assembly by Assemblymember Sturpey. So we're waiting for that to happen. And I think you all, many of you, got a mailer from the home care advocates. And it was a little bit of a scary mailer because it has like a dark picture and it's Joanne's on it and Hochul is on it. So that was sent to many different assembly members across the state. That wasn't just targeted to Joanne. And so I think people called us, they were concerned, what is Joanne doing about this? So as we know with advocacy, I think the reason the advocates were kind of smart about this, as we know, you can't just call up and get Kathy Hochul on the phone, right? But you can call up and get our office on the phone. So it's very good strategy to go to your local representative to say, what are we doing about this? So that's why they got, you might have seen the mailer. So I do think there will be some legislative action on it. I really hope, not just for my sister, but for the other 250,000 people in the program. They deserve to have a program that's transparent and that's well functioning. So happy to talk about that anymore, but that was Joan Millman brought the mailer here. So thank you. And yeah,
I still have mine at home.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to acknowledge, I'm not sure if she's still on the Zoom, but one of our endorsed candidates, Turquoise Haskin, available. She did join us at our election night party with CBID and BYD. I was actually sitting with Matt when we brought up the election results, and we got to formally show her that she had won, and she was taking photos of my screen. It was kind of fun. The highlight moments of the evening. And also earlier, another one of our endorsed candidates, Norma Jean Jennings, also was here. Carlos, yes? So,
You guys want me to do a little Andrew?
yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
Been sitting here all night for this.
Yeah, you're just waiting for it. Well, hello, everyone. I'll put on my district director for Andrew hat for a second. Well, first of all, we're very excited about the congestion pricing. The senator has been calling on it and disagreed with the governor with a pause. So we are excited about that. Make sure we have funding for the MTA. One thing that the senator is very excited about is the governor also signed our red light camera bill, which will quadruple the amount of red light cameras from 150 to 600. The senator is a huge advocate for street safety, for pedestrian safety. We're losing way too many New Yorkers every single year. So hopefully this is going to be very critical to reduce speeds and hold people accountable who are breaking the law. Another big victory was that we, with our local partners, with assembly members' office, a council member, getting mid-block crossings at Atlantic Avenue. We already saw two tragic fatalities that we had just on Atlantic. It's a very dangerous street. These mid-block crossings are going to be very essential, very hard to make that happen. Something that's not in the 52nd, but right next door, Red Hook Bank. So the office and myself, I was lead on the project for over a year and a half, negotiating to get a bank in Red Hook, which is a very underbanked community. They haven't had a bank in almost a decade, which means so many, and it's the largest public housing community lives in Red Hook. And what you're seeing is thousands of dollars in check cashing fees from working class families because they don't have a bank, they have to leave the neighborhood. Well, now we have Spring Bank, which is a B Corp community bank that has just opened. They soft launched ribbon cutting in January. We're so excited. A material, physical bank for the community that's going to help with banking services for working class, low income communities, but also entrepreneurs and the small businesses and the nonprofits. So this is something that the senator is very proud. I'm very proud. This is one of the good things when government gets things done, and now we have to sell it. So here we are selling it. We're going to be having that ribbon coming. We're excited about. And lastly, there's a lot, but just want to mention related to the election. The senator is a leader in fighting for immigrants. And New York for All is a bill that we're trying to pass that would not allow local law enforcement to be deputized by ICE and federal government for enforcement. We're facing a very horrific moment. We saw what happened in the first Trump administration. This is going to be that on steroids. So we have to respond as a state for our immigrant communities. It makes our communities much less safe when anyone can be deported, when there's these mass raids. That we don't need grandma who's been here for 30 years to be ripped apart from her family and using local law enforcement. So this is to really make sure that we protect our immigrant communities, protect the law as well. A lot of these deportations these are not judicial warrants that they use. So these are unlawful removals. So we're fighting hard in session. We're working with our allies to try to pass New York for All and be ready for day one of the Trump administration, which tries to come after New Yorkers and our immigrant New York communities. That is it for me. But on that hat. So, anyone any questions?
Guessing you're about to put. You have that look like you're about to put on another hat.
I have a quick question. I mean, hearing what you said, which is really good about the banks and so on. Finally, a bank in Red Hook, and being a transplant New Yorker. How many people live in Red Hook? That that community that they have absolutely no bank for so long, that this is like, what, year 2024, and we finally get the bank in Red Hook.
Yeah, there's around 10,000 people that live in Red Hook. And this is due to a lot of issues. You know, obviously it's a community that's very, it's very cut off. And a lot of banks, that's the problem with big, big banks and just corporations, right? That they don't see an incentive in a community like that. And also with Sandy, it really also hurt the community that there was a loss of bank there. But, it's about political will. And that's why government matters. And that's why it also matters the representative of the office. The senator really made an emphasis that when he got this new district, that we would really focus on delivering for people, and that we would not. People have been forgotten for far too long. Residents of Red Hook feel that in other neighborhoods too. We're not going to let that happen. So we took an assessment of the needs of the community. Banking was a huge issue, and we got to work. And I'm very, very proud that after a lot of hard work and working with a lot of community stakeholders, that we're opening up a community bank. And it was great to see it. It's beautiful. It's so cool. When it goes from an idea comes to something that physically is going to help a lot of people and really be an engine of economic power in that community, and really help a community that has so much entrepreneurs, so much talent, so much. It's incredible. And we need to deliver, and now we need to make sure that everyone knows, right, in the community. And it's not just for Red Hook, right? Anyone can go to the bank. So we encourage everyone.
Isn't Lundy's opening up in Red Hook?
He said again.
Lundy's.
Lundy's. I am not.
Yes, it is.
It is?
They
Okay.
They should open an account. with Quebec.
Yes, so we're actually working with the Red Hook Business Alliance and we all the stakeholders so that they could actually reach out and open bank accounts and support the nonprofits too, as well.
Carlos hasn't been in Brooklyn long enough to remember Lundy's.
Well,
Carlos hasn't been.
Hi. Hi, guys. Hi, it's Aileen. I'd like to say just one thing. It's a little bit political, but I do appreciate the senators' focus on governance. I think a big reason we lost the election was because we were talking about politics. We weren't talking about governance. However, with that, I am a little concerned about doubling down on our old message without evaluating it first. So when the senator is going out and saying, he's passing a law regarding like strengthening our immigrant community, I think we should take a pause and evaluate and maybe develop a little bit more of a nuance, either both policy and then how do we communicate it? Because we're not going to win by doubling down on Trump. We're not. So I think we need to really, like I said, take a pause, take a step back, let's reevaluate, because I don't want another election like we just had. So I'm very concerned about that type of stance, because I think it's a losing one. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, thank you for that. And I think these are very important questions to have in these moments. I think one thing that we're trying to do is also decouple the idea, people voted for Trump, and let's be honest, he has less than 50%. Okay. So like we talk about a mandate, it's less than 50%. However, he did win, right? He got more votes than us, but people did not vote to rip apart people who've been here for 20, 10, 30 years, right? I think there's a reaction, a combination. And I think when we talk about it, one thing we want to talk about is decouple it. Like what
Carlos, they
We have
did.
to acknowledge that
They
some people
absolutely
did.
did vote for that, Carlos. I'm sorry. They absolutely did.
I believe that the issue at the border absolutely was an issue. I'm saying that once people see the implementation of what Trump's gonna do, he's not just gonna focus on the border. When people start seeing their workplaces being raided, when they see that their neighbor is being ripped apart from their house, the reaction is much different. And you're already seeing that even in right-wing spaces in these podcasts, people say like, well, we'll see. I hope he doesn't do the whole, there's 12 million people, right? So we need to acknowledge, right, that it is an issue. But also we believe that the reaction is going to be very swift. The public outcry is going to be against. Let's not forget when children were being put in cages, what that reaction is. The problem is we unfortunately, I think, forgot about that. And there's a real concern. We're seeing a lot of people with migrants in the city that were bused, right, from Texas. Let's not forget about that. It absolutely created a perception. I think what we're trying to talk about is that it's not going to make our community safer to do these mass raids of everyone and just start terrorizing communities. It doesn't make us safe, because then if there are actual crimes that need to be reported, a lot of immigrants are not gonna go to the local police because they don't trust them. So this is also really about safety and the rule of law to make sure that we follow the law. There's already laws on the books that certain crimes are gonna be coordinated. However, what New York for All does is it clarifies so that there isn't a different rule of law and enforcement county by county across the state, so that it is universal. And that we don't see this collaboration and the loss of trust, and it will make our communities less safe. But I agree that we need to talk about it more, and we hope to be doing that in the coming months.
By the way, we agree with you at what you said.
No, I understand. It's how we
We're just
yeah,
saying, but people
how we
did vote.
communicate.
People did vote, and some of the voters be unhappy with the result.
So maybe the most logical thing to do, simple, ready? Why don't they do an economic analysis of the impact of the immigrants on the GDP of New York State, and then send it to every other state and say, you know what? They're contributing $162 billion to the economy. Gee, that's the economy of Texas. I bet that would change it a little bit.
I just think, the Republican governor of Ohio said that the Haitians were good for spring.
If I could just make one
Sure.
comment, just to, along the lines of what Eileen said, I hope, I'm just wondering if we're gonna have it with the Democratic Party, a reckoning, some call it a circular firing squad. Let's have it, because we suck. 2016, we lost to Trump. 2020, we barely made it. And again, we lost across the board, every single swing state, disastrous. Sure, it's not 60-40, we're still a divided country, 52-49, whatever. But we better have a really clear message and think through, and it's not, it's sort of reiterating our messages that failed and say, hey, we just have to communicate it better. Clearly, when I campaign, I can tell you the biggest issues in Red Hook, biggest issues in Sunset Park, our Chinatowns were inflation, migrants, and crime, which were the big, Republican messages. So we better kind of think through what are our messages.
No, I agree that, and I think that the electeds that did very well in these contested areas were the ones that were able to acknowledge the pain and act on certain things. And then also say what they're doing for them and how they're fighting the people that are trying to price gouge them, and increasing inflation. Like we saw Pat Ryan, I think he did a great thread. I think everyone should see his thread. It's like, well, when they're trying to buy up these corporations come and buy up the line, are increasing the price. I fought against them. I fought against these corporations. I fought against the police. But immigration it's an issue. It's a wedge issue that always gets used. I think from what I'm trying to communicate to all of you, right, is that like these raids are going to happen, and it's not going to be popular, but they're going to do them, and we're working hard to protect our immigrant communities, because we have to decouple the idea right now in the public mind. Immigration is the recent arrivals, right? That is what people right now are connecting with immigration and the issue at the border. But Trump's, as we know, Trump's real plan is to just deport anyone. Doesn't matter whether you've been here, contributing member of the society. I do think we need to get better at talking about it in general as Democrats and figure out how we protect our immigrant community while also addressing the.
Isn't that all we've been talking about, is how scary Trump's plans are?
Yeah, and he won anyway.
Talking about, it's not what.
Wait, Carlos.
But I'm communicating just what we're doing on New York Pro. Like I'm just communicating on a specific policy to let you all know as we're preparing for.
But there's a risk you need to be sensitive to, which is this. If the first thing you do after the election is say, we're gonna have a policy to protect the immigrants, that plays into Trump's message, which is you care about the immigrants first and you care about the other people, the Americans later. You've got to be prepared to stay, to do something for the voters that we lost.
And we're working with since this is a kind of friendlier crowd to what the policies, but the way we are talking about this. What we are focused on, right, in communicating is that this is more of a rule of law issue, right? Because when you have law enforcement coordinating specifically with federal immigration, especially when these are not like judicial warrant, what happens is that.
You've lost the audience.
No, but I'm sure.
No,
No, I think we're.
He's here to report on behalf of the senator. He's not the elected official here,
That's
so.
okay, I'm down to answer.
And we have Vicky.
Here's how I would put it together. We have made a lot of points tonight, and we just need to connect. Crappy litters, okay? We have a disengaged populace. And we have, ever since the Goldwater, bomb ad, Willie Horton, whatever, what works is fear. Why did Democrats have wins in 2022? Because we used women's health, women's personal health stories to generate fear. That is how people vote. Lizard brain fear. Rule of law is important. I want the Senate to pass that. I don't give a damn if you all talk about it. I want you to pass it because you do not capitulate in advance. And so I'm sorry, this is terrorism. I was at JFK the first Saturday of Trump's term, working with the ACLU, trying to communicate to people with green cards, people who had every right to be in this country, who were not being allowed off the plane because they were Muslim. Okay? We have to have this kind of rule of law bulwark in place before January 20th, because you do not obey in advance. And this is not about politics. This is about shoring up so that we do not have brown shirts coming in. Yes, we have a political story to tell. Good God, we do not deputize local police to do Trump's will.
I think, I agree with you, Vicky. We don't want to turn into Quizlings. We don't want to events, but everything you just said was said 3 weeks ago when we lost anyway. And I think what people here are trying to say is, and we're trying to communicate to Carlos, the American people sent a message, whether we like it or not. And I think we're being overly optimistic to say, well, they didn't really agree with Trump. Trump said what he's going to do and people voted for him.
I'm not, but
And I think what we're trying to say is that the first thing, if we're going to recalibrate the party and we're going to try and get ourselves in a place where we can win in 7 months, where we can win in 11 months, because that's the timeline we're on. Making the first thing we do a repudiation of what the people voted for. And what I said before, when we're talking about that, what every Democrat who managed to flip a seat said, I'm going to secure the border, saying, no, actually, we're going to fight that. I'm not saying we can't enable brown shirts. I think if we keep talking like that, we're going to keep losing because no one believed us the first time and it wasn't a winning message. And I think it is politics. This is all politics. It's what we do here. It's why we're here. We're here to talk about politics and doubling down like what Carlos is saying. And I think that there is good things that he can do there. And I think I trust Andrew more than anyone else in this room. Sorry, because I've known him forever, back when we were both Eagle Scouts together. I trust him more than, yeah. No, well, not together as Scouts, but we worked together on the board of directors. We worked in Scouts together. We're both Eagle Scouts. That's how I met Andrew before he was ever in politics. I trust him more than anyone because of that. So if Andrew was going to say this is what he should do, I'm going to follow him. But if he's going to ask me what I think he should do, I'm going to tell him, making this the first move you do after the election only tells you that you didn't listen to the people.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we lost is that the people think the Democrats didn't listen to them. And that's why I think we lost. And I think we can't go and then just thumb our noses at them, because one of the things that's never talked about here today, $15 billion every year of our budget comes from the federal government. And if we spend the next 4 years thumbing our noses at Donald Trump, we're gonna have to explain to the voters of New York why all that money disappeared. Because Congress is gonna take it away. All his lackeys that he's gonna get confirmed are gonna hold up the money, and we're gonna have to explain to them why we had education get cut, had roads get cut, protect migrants that they already said they want out of the country.
No, it's okay, because the tariffs, all we have to say is you're paying for the tariffs. If Trump actually does his policies, okay, because there are no guardrails anymore. He owns the Supreme Court. Nobody with conscience is gonna work in his administration, okay? Even Ivanka, Ivanka and Jared are, no, thank you. We had to do everything we can locally as guardrails. I'm not saying that, okay, but that's what
I love the conversation, but FYI, we have the room for about 5 more minutes.
I'm saying to do it.
Don't want,
Well, you could.
also it's very nice to us.
To a local bar and.
I let's drink to a local bar, I will say that.
Yeah. Davis, Colin, I'll add one thing.
Sure.
One, I agree with you. Also agree here, and I'll get what you're saying, but guys, messaging is important. What he's saying, plain out and simple, is how you do the message. It doesn't mean you don't do the rules, you don't do all the other stuff, whatever, but what you present to the public and what you scream at them, that this is what we're gonna do, it's going to have that impact. Because, again, sometimes people don't even know what the bloody rules are. They don't even know what the laws are. They don't know what's on the laws and whatever else. So if we're talking about, oh, by the way, let's send the ones who were criminals home, this and that, say it. Because a lot of times, that's what the Republicans are playing. They're saying they're bringing in crime, they're bringing in this, but we're not. And we need to get to the point where we don't make it seem like we're just here to protect all of the bad elements, because that's what the Republicans focus on. All they do is pick and choose. These are the bad ones. This one committed a murder. It's brought to you by a Democrat. So we have to get to that point where we explain to people, these are our immigration laws. And make it easy, stupidly easy. Even if you create TikTok ads and whatever else. And by the way, those laws were voted on by Democrats and Republicans. That's how they became a law. But we're not here to protect people who commit crimes, no matter whether they're immigrants, Americans, born here or otherwise, or any of this other stuff. So the messaging is what we're talking about when you come out and you says, oh, we don't care what Trump said and what you voted on, this is what we're gonna, you gotta be careful with that messaging. All right, now, the other part I will say, beyond this immigration stuff, I noticed tonight, I didn't bring it up at all, that we spoke about all this other things as to why the Democratic Party lost, and we never once mentioned Gaza. That was an issue. And we never, ever, ever in this room, no one did. I said, I wasn't gonna bring it up, let me listen. And we talk about young people and how they voted, and I have young people friends and my son's friends and all this other stuff. Many of them are Jewish, who said they were not gonna vote for Harris because they were so opposed to what was going on in Gaza.
Many of them just stayed home.
And so, exactly. So a lot of the people who stayed home and didn't vote this and that, those were
Especially
issues.
in New York, because
And
would
we
do that.
needed to
I mean, I'm
get
sure
to that
everybody
point.
It's a lot of vote swapping. I have friends who were personally asked to vote swap.
Yeah, so we need to get to that point where we discuss everything, and we can't be on just the Israel bandwagon. We could support Israel as an ally and do all the other stuff, but we can't say, well, we'll completely ignore war crimes and other stuff and feel like we're being wagged, like, oh, we're not really in control of ourselves. The most disgusting thing to see for us as Americans, is to watch Netanyahu come in front of our Congress and both sides stand up like, trained seals to clap. But they do that and nothing else that have to do with American policies. And that's a shameful thing.
I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Okay,
because
we
that was like a big issue that we didn't get to. but-
Never addressed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, but
Okay,
I'm just saying,
please
in
also
general,
to talk about it now,
both
we'll go-
sides, like Greenfield, I'm not saying everyone did, Bernie didn't, et cetera, et cetera. But we need to get to the point where we don't ignore these things.
Do you have a question?
Wait, sorry, I, just point of order for the next meeting, sorry, real quickly, point of order, and by the way, Carlos, like, this wasn't to put you, this all.
We love you, buddy.
This
We
was-
love you. Thank you.
We love you.
Issue.
We want to tell you to do the right thing, but get the messaging right.
This was the issue on the topic, but I do think one thing we really should do in terms of what can we do is we need to think about strategically as a club with a lot of clout, how we convey these concerns to the state party and to the national party. Because somebody told me once, like, oh, can you tell the Democratic Party this? And I'm like, who do I talk to in this National Democratic Party? I have no idea. So like but we do, otherwise it's gonna be the same thing. And maybe it's organizing with other states. Because like there is not the connection between people who were doing the on-the-ground work and between a lot of fancy Democratic consultants and other people. So like, we have to figure out a way to get our concerns and messages to them because there's a big disconnect.
Can I make a local?
Great if our state committee members were here, because like they would have loved this conversation and would be perfect to bring it to like Jay Jacobs.
But Max Rose is thinking about running for DNC. Max Rose is woke. If people have contact with him, and I've already done it, I've outlined what I think the new chair and the party are going to have to think about in terms of restructure. But get your voices to, because I've talked to plenty of DNC people. But right now, when there's an open campaign, you know, there's an opportunity to convey to the prospective candidates what it is, you know, at the local level that we've seen that's a problem.
Yeah, Chris, you and I talk after this because I see Max actually in about 2 weeks. Larry, last question, then we.
Last question, and then I'm gonna close out.
There is planned a convention in 2 years. It's a Democratic Party convention. We should find out a little more about it. And we should try to be represented at the convention.
That state convention, we are represented by our 2 state committee
Well, just to close it out, my part before I go, I'll let Seamus, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the questions and the.
Right, you were up there for a long time.
Well, you know, man,
But she plotted against you.
it takes two to tango. It takes two to tango. But I just want to say, like, thank you for the questions. You know, I'm definitely gonna, I'm gonna take that back and think about the messaging. We are working with a coalition.
We want you to.
Yeah, we're working with a coalition for the messaging. I have to say the senator is like very direct on like getting, I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Oh,
Yes. What?
get a few poets, if you. Hire a few poets, words.
Yeah.
The point is that on just his legislative agenda, we're very excited about like working families, child tax credit, putting that push, and the other stuff that I mentioned, but on the immigration thing. At the end of the day, we feel that we will be vindicated when Trump becomes president. The New York law is the law to protect our communities here in New York. And we believe that the public opinion will shift and that we're taking a stand that is on the right side of history and it's going to be a right side on the issue and the opinions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Carlos, okay, just a few, just housekeeping items, just, upcoming events. On the 30th, Maya and I will actually be doing some flyering at the Fifth Avenue, tree lighting. If anyone would like to join us, you know, try to,
For what?
membership recruitment.
Oh.
Yeah, so if anyone would like to join us, we'll put in like the emails, you know, it'd be a nice way and also, you know, get ourselves into the holiday spirit.
Will we be serving booze to them or? We need, yeah.
Just remember, just hand it to people from the 50s.
Well, we don't discriminate on party members, on where people live. And we don't have a permit to hand out alcohol, but when it's ourselves as a club, we do not have a permit. If people want to do it on their own, they can deal with that with the police. No, I know you're joking, but I'm just saying for the record.
What's in your water?
It's a cuss.
I just have to finish like 3 things and I'm done. On December 3rd, here at 6 o'clock is the swearing in of Judge Talia Berman, someone that we did help get elected. It's gonna be right here at Brooklyn Law School. Getting info in the emails. Next night, we are planning an IND meeting. So we usually don't have a December meeting, but because of the number of candidates, we're gonna do that. Start hearing from candidates for city council and borough president. We're looking at, it looks like we'll have our meeting, because it has been brought to my attention that it's, there is a conflict with CBID, but we may try and move it earlier in the day. But January 12th is our New Year's party, formerly the holiday party. We tried to change the name.
That's in January.
That's in January, yes.
Deep in January.
January 12th.
For years.
Then later that week, on the 16th, here at Brooklyn Law School, we will be doing a joint mayoral forum with CVID, Brooklyn Young Dems, and Lambda. Yeah, here in Brooklyn Law School. So that was 16th of January.
Oh, 16th of January.
All these things will be in the emails, so you don't have to worry about it. It's also on our calendar on our website. We're also aiming for on the February 6th, a public advocate and comptroller forum with those same clubs. And then following week, we'll have our final endorsement meeting on the February 13th. So, any questions, reach out to us, indbrooklyn.org@gmail.com.
When are we gonna hear from judicial commission?
That is likely gonna be, that we're aiming for the 13th of February. Yeah, so Howard, reach out to me on that stuff, we'll.
Yeah, because, you gotta figure out how to conduct the ballot.
Yes.
For that.
Yes. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. What's your name?